Welcome back to Buy the House, Build the Home. I just forgot our podcast name.
Earlier, I think I said build the house. Buy the house, build the home.
I mean, do whatever you need to do.
Whatever you need to do.
Just make it happen. Okay, this is part 2 of getting to know us.
Part 2.
Yes.
Last time we had story time with Shelby.
Yes, and my story time went a little long.
I mean,
so we made it
you're
into
only
a
trying to
2-part.
condense your whole life in this, like,
That's
not really your
true.
whole life, but it's hard. It's hard.
1/3 of my life.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, I'm probably, do you think I can make it to 99?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go.
100%.
Awesome. So today we're going to dive into your story.
Story time with Betty.
Yes.
Here we go.
So you can just jump in.
I guess we'll start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Mansfield, Texas.
Mansfield.
Back when Mansfield was not what it is today. It was like we had to like drive to Arlington to get to a Walmart. It was pretty
Were
small
there dirt
town.
roads?
No, we had
okay.
pavement. There definitely were dirt roads. My grandparents lived off of one, but born and raised in Mansfield. I'm the third of 3. I have an older brother, older sister. I went to UTA for college. I'm a first generation college grad.
Oh.
And it was like, no question, you have to go to college, but also we don't have any idea what to do to help you. So we had to just kind of like figure that out. So thank goodness for my sister and my siblings just kind of going ahead of me, but graduated from there and, started working. I mean, when you were sharing your story, you were diving in. So I'll go in.
No.
One of the things that kind of was just a very interesting challenge for me growing up. My dad, you know, it's kind of funny how as a kid you hear things certain ways and they impact you, and then you grow up and you're like, oh. But my dad really only wanted 2 kids, and I'm the third. And not that he didn't absolutely adore me when I came, and my dad
Wasn't that a
loves
lot
me.
to do with like finance, like the risk
Oh yeah,
that was involved of having
you know,
a
we
third,
did
things
not
like
have
that.
a lot of money growing up at all.
Yeah.
And he worked so many jobs. He was such a good father, like he provided, but there wasn't a lot of play or emotional connection. It was very, I mean, he was exhausted when he got home. He did what he could for his family. And so I had heard, I don't think anyone meant to like, your dad didn't want, you know, but I had heard that as a message growing up. And I think I internalized that as a little girl. And I remember being really young, and my mom would leave and being like, I'm going to clean the dishes. I'm going to wash the dishes. I'm going to clean the house.
You're already going to serve for love in a way.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, well, since I know that I felt like a burden. Yeah. And so therefore, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add value to you. I'm going to add value. And so what happens in that scenario often is you lose the sense of being able to have needs. You feel like anything outside of adding value is like a problem. So I can't really ask anything of you, because if I ask something of you, that's like, and the truth is every human.
Because you'll probably then be rejected. Like you're going to be too much.
Right.
Sure.
And every human being, you're not living, breathing without needs, and especially as a child.
Yeah.
Right. And so I kind of internalized a lot of that. And it's interesting that as I unpacked that as an adult, and, you know, my parents did the best they could. They're amazing, absolutely amazing. But that was just something that crept in, and we all have those things, all of us. But all that to say, that kind of leads in a little bit later on. But after high school, I went to college. I worked full time in college and went to school full time. I started working when I was like 12, 13. I taught swimming lessons, and then
was that a desire of yours, or did you feel like it was a necessity?
It was, my dad, I mean, we worked. I will say one thing he really taught was an incredible work ethic, and me and all 3 of my siblings, or all 3 of us, got that from my dad and my mom. Like we learned, and the swimming lessons job, like it was just fun summer money, and you know, I got to swim and get tan, you know. But then my first job was in high school. It was that juxtaposition of like, you want a car, but you need to have money to buy a car, but you need a job to pay for the car. but you need a car to get to the job.
To the job. Yeah.
So I started working at Subway.
Oh.
I'm a certified sandwich artist. Okay. I love it. Which is crazy. But back then in Mansfield, like it was like actually one of the nicest, like they just opened it, and it was one of the better, healthier options for fast food. So I did that. And then senior year of high school, started working at Chase Bank.
Okay.
And
that's a switch.
Yeah, made a switch. Me and a good friend of mine, her dad knew a lot of people at the bank, and so we started working together. I moved out when I was 18. We got an apartment together, and we worked together. It was so fun. And I was going to school. And so did that for a while. I became lead teller at Chase Bank, and they really were pushing me to get into banking.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you cannot. I mean, they're like, we'll pay for your school. I was like, I do not want to be a personal banker. We cannot be doing this. I loved the people. And, but at this time I met this woman at my church, and they had just come through. They had just moved here, and her brother had a company called Harvest Rock. And she was working there, and they asked if I wanted to come on and help with some like accounting stuff. For those of you who know me, accounting is not my forte at all. But I had already kind of mentally made a shift from Chase Bank. I'd been there about 2 years at that point. And, I forgot that I worked a little bit as a waitress, which I think everybody should have to do at some point in their life, but it was only for a couple months.
I've never had to, and I've actually been very grateful. I did work in coffee, though. I don't know if that counts at all.
That counts. You need to be doing some like retail, something in the service
too long
industry. Yeah. But anyway, all that to say, I had kind of already made a shift, and so I ended up taking this job. I'll skip all these details, or I will talk for 7 hours. But ended up taking this job, and young, brilliant entrepreneur. He was like 27 at the time, and he had this company that he did promotions and ads for JCPenney. It was their outlet division, and he was basically a middleman. Like, he worked with a bunch of suppliers from across the U.S., but we didn't have a warehouse, and we didn't have our own product.
Gotcha.
But we would meet with the JCPenney buyers, help them. Like, let's say these buyers were needing to liquidate, like, it's the outlet division, right? Yeah. So it's like, hey, we have all these leftover Lazy Boy recliners or whatever. And so we would meet with them and then help find things that would go in their ads. So if with the Lazy Boy, let's say, we'd be like, let's do popcorn, DVD player. This is back in the day with the DVD players, a remote control, and we would put together an ad, and I'd go to the suppliers, find the product, and then we'd mark it up. And then we would drop ship, and we would help with all the shipping, because their shipping process was really difficult.
Yeah.
And not everybody wanted to do it, and they would mess it up. So there was a lot of value for having a bit of a middleman in there to make sure everything's okay, because this is on ad, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing that. I started in accounting and doing their chargebacks. So JCPenney would charge you for, this was shipped, but only 5 cases instead of 6. And then you could fight it, because you could be like, well, but it weighed this, and this is the weight. And so I ended up doing that. And it was not my favorite thing ever, but had a lot of favor with the owner. And then very quickly kind of ended up more assisting him. And so I started really kind of running this JCPenney business.
Okay.
And I would go meet with the buyers, and they were in Plano at the time.
Yeah.
And then they moved their headquarters to Columbus. So then I was flying out to Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
Which was...
And you were young.
Yeah. And it was fun, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
And the owner at this time was he was brilliant, taking the money from this JCPenney business that was really like a cash cow. And he was investing it in real estate in the TCU area of Fort Worth. And this was back when you could get a duplex for like $80,000 or something. And so
there hadn't been quite the boom yet. I'm assuming.
And when I started with him, he had like 2 properties. He had actually purchased a small apartment complex. It was a 12-unit apartment complex, but we were officing out of one of the units, and then he was renting the rest of them.
Okay.
And then when we kind of grew and expanded, he took over a second apartment complex. So there was like Unit A and Unit B, and we were in there. And
cool.
He was just a very instrumental part of my life. I mean, mentor, brother, friend, boss. I mean, just amazing guy. And
he helped you get your first deal, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like pushed you towards it.
Yep, absolutely. So I was working the JCPenney business, and then I had the craziest thing happen, and I'll spare all the details, but I ended up getting a crazy job offer in LA.
Yeah.
Out in the Calabasas area. And it was a situation, didn't make any sense. Like, I was literally Justin Bieber's mom's personal assistant.
Yeah.
So crazy, didn't make any sense.
It's like one of those random life things where you're like, I'm going to have to say yes to this.
When I do the like 2 truths and a lie game, I'm always like, I won a year's supply of fruit roll-up in the 7th grade, which is true. I was Justin Bieber's mom's personal assistant, also true. And then I throw in some random thing like I had a pet turtle, and it's like people always think I had a pet turtle. I'm like, actually, that's the lie here. But all that to say, I quit at Harvest Rock after I'd been there for about 6.5 years, and moved out there to LA. While I was out there, Aaron Anderson, who's the owner, the boss, the mentor, he ends up calling me and he's like, I don't want to do this JCPenney thing anymore. I've been focusing on real estate. I want you to move home and buy the company from me. And at the time, I was dating someone back in Texas, and it really, the job in LA was completely unsustainable.
Yeah,
I could write a book about that experience alone. But I got this opportunity to buy this company, which was, I mean, incredible. He was going to help me figure out everything, like line of credit and all. I mean, he knew what to do. And I was young, but I was like, you know what? Yeah, I can't say no to this. And so I moved back to Texas, resigned in LA, moved back to Texas. And then we had all the paperwork ready to buy the company. And JCPenney was going through a shipping transition. So he's like, hey, why don't we wait till December? And then we'll have it all. We'll make sure this transition's good. He was really looking out for me. And I'm like, perfect. So move back, get plugging back in. In the meantime, he's still building up real estate, buying deals left and right. And but I'm doing JCPenney business. And then we are ready to go for December. And in October, all of the JCPenney outlet stores closed. So I went from buying the company to closing it down. Which was so hard.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was the reason I left LA, and I was like,
what's going on?
What is going on? You know? But I'm so glad I didn't buy it, right? Like that would have been horrible.
And the timing.
Oh my gosh. Insane. And so ended up closing that down, and I got all these job offers from all these suppliers, but they were all out of state, and it was like New York and New Jersey, and I didn't want to move again. And he was like, get your real estate license. Like, study, get your license. I'm about to do this big land deal. I mean, it's going to be incredible. He literally let someone go to make a position for me.
Aww.
And so I did. I agreed. Studied, got my license. And then 6 days later, he was in the hospital with stage 4 brain cancer at 33 years old. And so at that point, I was like, okay, I got into real estate not because of real estate. I got into real estate because I'm going to be here to help with all of this. Yeah. And he was doing treatments in Germany and Switzerland. And I jumped in to this property management company.
And you were young, like mid-20s,
right?
right?
I was like 26, yeah.
Okay.
26, yeah. Wow. Anyway, and he is doing all these treatments, and really just because there was that history, he trusted me. I got thrown into it. And at that point, we had about 150 units, 300 tenants. So it was property management.
Yeah.
And then also because he was going through the cancer and the treatments, we sold a lot of the duplexes, and he was also purchasing some a little bit. So he would sell some and buy some. So I got really connected with TCU investors.
Yeah.
And he kind of quickly made me vice president of the property management company. And so when I tell people I was like thrown into real estate, I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. Yeah. I did not got my license, went to Keller Williams, was on phone duty, I didn't have a normal experience by any means. Yeah. I was like figuring things out, you know? Yeah. And because of what he was walking through, it was, the training was
minimal
training, and but also the best, right? Like I think you learn the most when you have experience, and I think sometimes people get stuck in the training and they don't actually start doing it themselves. So kind of got thrown into the fire, and then he actually got cancer free and then had a reoccurrence. And so 18 months later, he passed away, which was so devastating.
Yeah.
And having to grieve that while at the same time, like, I was keeping things going and running and I was having to fax over death certificates. And there was just a lot that was really difficult. In the middle of all that, I got married in 2014, November of 2014, and he passed away in June of 2015. So it was just really difficult. And then I stayed on and was really kind of, vice president. We were doing really well. We were number one property management company in TCU area. And then his things kind of changed. There was a new guy came on the scene. I kind of felt really bad for this guy actually, because he stepped in, into another man's shoes, and he had married his widower. They didn't have any children, but he had a law background. And one thing I know about lawyers and entrepreneurs is they don't think the same way. They don't, right? Like lawyers are always risk averse. They're thinking about what
safety,
right?
Probably.
And an entrepreneur is like very risk taker and like, let's ask for forgiveness later.
Let's do it. Yeah. And then we'll figure it out.
Yeah. So it just changed the dynamic, and the company just really shifted, and all of a sudden the values were no longer lining up with my personal values. And so I ended up resigning after 10 years total between the JCPenney business and the real estate business. Yeah. And so it felt like my whole life, right? Because it kind of was my 20s,
It was your 20s, which is so foundational.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And so I ended up resigning there, and I still had my license, and I'd actually done a lot of deals at this point with him. I wasn't getting normal commission. I was a W-2. I had like that safety. But it took a minute. At the time, my husband had just gotten on staff at a church and was like, we should move to Dallas. And we were living in Fort Worth. And so I was like, okay, let's do it. I don't know what's coming. My resume was very impressive. Yeah. But, I was also like, what do I do? I mean, am I going to go to a corporate job? I've never really loved or wanted to do that. Yeah. So I didn't know what to do. And I had a bit of an unraveling of like, who am I without this company? And, just the grief of all of it.
Especially because you didn't get into real estate originally because you had this deep, dying love for real estate. Right. You got in because Aaron at the time was like, do this. Yeah. And you trusted Aaron. Yeah. And what you were doing. So you probably were evaluating that.
100%. And I would see him, like, he would have me come, let's go look at this one while they're renovating, and what paint color would you choose? Yeah. And so I was already getting my feet wet and really loved that aspect of it. But no, it wasn't like this. And I think the funny thing is most realtors are going to tell you, I didn't decide in college, I want to go to I want to get my license. Yeah. It's always this like little thing that's back there that you're kind of interested in. And then there's a person or a situation or something that pushes you, that leads you into it.
Over the edge.
Yeah, over the edge. You have to jump in. Yeah. So anyway, I ended up I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I hung my license with this woman that went to my old church. She was like, well, you can hang your license with me. I was obviously, everybody wants you as a broker because they're going to make money off of you. But she was like, hey, just figure out what you want to do. But I didn't want my license to go inactive. So hung my license with her and kind of gave it a second to breathe. And then real estate just started kind of happening very organically. I had a friend that wanted to buy and sell. She referred me over to a friend who wanted to buy and sell. They referred me. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, yeah, I don't even, and I think I closed, I don't remember how many I did, but I did quite a bit in a short amount of time. And I was like, I don't even feel like I'm working. And I was like, maybe I'll just do this, instead of, because like I said, my resume was impressive. I was like, maybe I go here. I just didn't, I didn't know. And so made that transition to full-time.
And how many years ago was this now?
So that was I resigned from the company in 2017. Okay. Started in 2007. Okay. And then I got my broker's license by 2018. Okay. Because, well, I won't get into, you have to have done it for so
many
long.
hours. And
so many hours, deals. So many transactions, all of that. And so then had moved to Dallas and still had quite a bit of community in Fort Worth. And so I started, was kind of working both sides of the Metroplex, which I love that I have that knowledge because I'm really able to help people who are, let's say, moving here, who don't know exactly where they want to be. I have I know all the cities in DFW pretty much. So, it just started snowballing, and I found deep passion around it. I loved the aspect of helping people, like, you know, we've talked about this kind of being a counselor alongside of someone that's going through something really difficult. And so, so I got my broker's license in 2018 and really was doing it. It started kind of snowballing. Yeah. And then 2020 hit.
COVID.
And, you know, I tell people, I said this to my husband at the time. I was like, this is going to be the year of great exposure. And because anytime that you get forced to slow down and be quiet, and I think in America, we're just so go, 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 your stuff comes out. That's why people have a hard time. Yeah. And then when they do slow down, they need to cope. They need a drink. They need to, right? Shop. They need something to distract. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And numb. And so I'll spare all the details of this, but went through a really tough divorce.
Exposure happened.
Lots of exposure that we weren't expecting. There was a really, in my brain, in my mind, very big affair with a kind of public figure. It was out there.
I want to confirm that that's not something that's just in your mind.
No, it was not just like your coworker or some TCU girl. It was a big affair with a kind of famous person's wife, and there was trips happening, and then I found out about all kinds of stuff. And I knew, I was like, you don't go from 0 to 2,000. And sure enough, and then things just started coming out, and when I tell you, I was devastated and broken. And I mean, I do tell people this though, like other women I've talked to or men, like when I found out, you know, he got caught. And when that happened, I felt great relief. Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I'm not crazy. And those couple of months leading up to it were some of the worst, because I would ask, I would say, is there something going on? Is there another woman? And it would just be like, no, I would never do that to you. You're just accusing me. And then I would apologize. And there's just that dynamic of like, I feel so insane, but also I know something's not okay. Yeah.
And, you were probably like crushed and grieved by the reality, but also at the same time felt relief that you weren't the crazy one.
100%. Yeah. And it was very, there was a lot that happened in my heart in that time, because I would say things like a fact, like you didn't come home last night. And then I would be met with, is that how you're twisting things? And then I would literally think, I went to the elders at my church and I was repenting for manipulation, because I was like, I think I'm being manipulative. And they pulled me aside and they were like, no, like, nobody's perfect, but you don't have a manipulative bone in your body. And I was like, okay, like, I don't, it was just a very confusing time. And all that to say, I got through it, but wildly enough, real estate just explodes, right? It's COVID. The rates go way down. Everybody starts moving to Texas. And I'm really grateful for my business during that time. But it was really difficult because I was trying to navigate and grieve. And I say this all, like, I would have forgiven him. I told him, I was like, I will roll up my sleeves and get in the mud with you. Yeah. And I just, now I'm super grateful, but.
And he didn't choose that.
No. And that's okay.
I think you're in a place of freedom now.
Oh my gosh.
Freedom.
No words.
Freedom
no
from
words.
That human.
And that time, like, was really, I tell people this, I say this on the podcast all the time, like, I no longer look at like walking through really hard things and like hell as a bad thing, because I know what happens on the other side of it if you are willing to lean in and let some work happen, right? So, walked through all of that, real estate starts exploding. And that process, the actual divorce process, I tell people, like, I don't wish that on anyone. I don't wish infidelity on anyone. Yeah. That kind of lying, kind of pathological lying, like that, the way that your brain is so foggy. And so just trying to process and build my business was
it was incredible watching you, because obviously, like, we don't just have a working relationship. We're also very good friends. Yeah. And so to watch you balance, like, you still have to get up on a daily basis and serve clients, even though you are going through one of the darkest times of your life, was very impressive to me. And like, grace of God, right? But yeah, I was very proud of you as a friend to be able to witness what you were doing, because it wasn't like, oh, I'm doing a deal a month and I can just kind of coast through. Like, you were extremely busy.
I had this one, just as you were saying that, I had this one client, and you're not going to like, these people are moving here from out of state.
Yeah.
And I picked them up. They flew in, and they're in my car for 9 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I had to map out. I mean, they were wanting to be within 2 hours of the airport. I'm mapping out stuff. We're literally looking at like 20 plus homes.
Yeah.
And they're in my car. And I don't do that with everyone, but in this case, this is what was going on. And I had just found out I found out about this other woman. I found out about drug. And I had pulled up. I turned into a gas station. I was weeping.
Yeah.
And I like get it. Like, I get it together. I'm like, okay. I like fix my mascara, and I'm deep inhaling. And they get in my car, and I'm like, hi, and internally I'm like, I feel like I'm being so fake, but I was also like, I'm not going to sit here with these people and be like, guess what I just found out my husband's, did you know me? Like, that's not appropriate either, right? Yeah. And so it was really, there were moments where I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And I'd be shaking. I'm trying to open up the door, and I'm like, and I can't eat, and I can't sleep, and I'm having panic attacks. And then I'm like reading comps, and I'm like, oh my, and I will say, I had incredible people around me, incredible team around me. My community, my friends, like, I couldn't have made it without you. Yeah. It takes a village whenever you're walking through something like that. And that's one of the things I tell people often is like, don't isolate. Do not isolate. And that's one of the easiest things that can come when you're walking through that kind of grief. But all that to say, the divorce was final. And, I grew up in a very Christian home.
Yeah.
I don't think I mentioned that earlier, but I mean, we were in church like Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night.
The most Christian you can get.
Yeah. We weren't allowed to watch, a lot of normal shows, because they were just protective and amazing. And I met this guy at church.
Yeah.
And we led worship together, and he was on staff at a church. And so there was a lot that I had to unpack there as well. Yeah. But in my household, like, divorce is a 4-letter word. It's like, you don't do that. Like, you have a scarlet letter over you. No one's going to want you. Like, there was so much attached to that really walking out of that and all of those lies, I would say, because I was like, no one's going to want me. And, my life is over.
So many people have wanted you since, though. Let's
just. And the truth,
look at her now.
The truth is, though, my life wasn't over. And really, in so many ways, it was just beginning.
Yeah.
And since then, work just, continue. I feel so blessed. I know a lot of people that COVID had the opposite effect of their business, and they were in, and I can't imagine, and I had purchased a couple of rental properties prior to being married, and so those are still rental properties to this day. I could talk about those forever. One of the best things I've ever done. I actually bought my first home. I got my real estate license on December 20th, 2013. And it closed on December 31st, 2013. And on December 26th, 2013 is when Aaron was in the hospital.
Yeah.
And so I was so scared, because he was supposed to come with me to closing. And then, and I was like, ah. So I still have those properties. And then I have another home in Dallas that I rent out, I rent to these guys in the Airbnb. And so I'm passionate about real estate. I'm passionate about home ownership. I'm passionate about generational wealth and all of that. But that's a little bit of it in a nutshell. I feel like, it's been a wild journey. When I tell people, they're like, Justin Bieber's mom? Like, and what? Oh my, so it's felt like thing after thing a little bit.
Well, I think too, when people meet you, you don't carry like the trauma or the wounding or the background of everything that you just shared. Even those 10 years of working at a property management company, like I don't know, when somebody meets you, there's just joy and there's peace and there's excitement. So I can see why people would also, when they hear your story, be like, huh? Because that's not what you exude.
Well,
what
thank
you
you.
exude is
I thank you so
good
much.
Life.
I hope not. It's funny. I told my therapist, lots of therapy. I told my therapist, I was like, I just don't want to be bitter. I don't want to get bitter.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, people either get bitter or they get better.
Yeah.
And it's a choice and it's work. And I feel like I did work really hard to keep my heart open and sort of keep that softness and that joy and that purity or childlikeness or whatever, if you will. That is who I am. But life comes and it's really easy to shut those places off because you want to self-protect. And so I feel really grateful for the resources that I've had. And like I said, the friendships and the community and, you know, people being able to walk with me and carry the load with me, if you will. You always need that. No matter what season you're in, you're always going to turn a corner and it's not going to be, you're not on the mountaintop all the time, right?
Yeah.
So I feel really grateful, but man, I mean, it'll just take you some directions, I'll tell you. Some directions you never thought you'd be in. And the thing is, that comes with the really, really hard lows. And it also comes with
the really high
highs, you know? So it's like,
how do you have a low if you don't have a high?
You can't. You can't. So anyway, that's a little bit about Betty. I love that. We didn't go bitter Betty. We went better Betty.
Good. And you'll always stay so better
grateful,
Betty.
And I'm doing amazing. I feel like I've healed so much and to be able to sit on the other side of the phone with someone else that's gone through something similar and even some of my clients and things I've dealt with at times, I think the experience and the tragedy and the pain and the heartbrokenness and all of the betrayal, it's all benefited me in so many ways.
It sets you up to be able to have empathy for people that are walking through anything trying in life.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah. So.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing.
Anytime. You know, it's really hard to condense like your life.
That's how I felt too. And after we got done like filming the other one, I was like, oh, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
I didn't say
my gosh.
part.
So much. Yeah. I'm like, oh wait, but then I did this. Yeah.
You know, part 10 here. At some point.
100. We'll just keep going on.
100%.
It's like Shelby part 2. Betty part 2.
Yes.
Shelby part 3. And we'll just keep going with like the different things. But
now y'all know us a little bit more.
Know a little bit about who these girls are. So.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining.
Awesome. Well, bye.
Bye.